Primitivism is an art style that developed as a result of early 20th century fascination with foreign cultures through European artists hoping to rejuvenate their art. Some key artists we might look at for examples of primitivist art might include Pablo Picasso, Paul Gauguin, Amedeo Modigliani, Henri Matisse, and Natalia Goncharova. The main characteristic of primitive art is the influence of non-Western cultures. This largely included African art, Indonesian art, Native American art, and even ancient European art or European folk art. Some of the formal qualities of this so-called outsider art that we can pick up on include a lack of linear perspective, so not the kind of three-dimensional rendering that we're used to seeing in Western painting, distortions of the figure, presence of symbols such as glyphs, and often a vibrant visual rhythm resulting from repetitive ornamental patterns or motifs. Increased anxiety towards industrialization and the rapidly advancing modern technology of the time really pushed these artists to look to these outside cultures as a kind of paradise lost. Many of these artists were exposed to these cultures through museums or ethnographic collections, such as Picasso. In 1907, Picasso made a trip to the Ethnographic Museum in Trocadero to see the collections of African masks. He found himself hugely inspired by this visit, saying he now understood what painting really meant, and that he had found his path. The work that Picasso created after this visit diverted greatly from his rose period of just 1 year prior. He began to adopt a much more geometrical, line-based, sculptural approach to his figures, and this would ultimately lead him to create what is debatably one of the greatest masterpieces of modern art. In 1907, Picasso worked on a large-scale depiction of a brothel scene featuring 5 figures. This painting would come to be known as La Demoiselle d'Avignon, and it would change the art world as we know it. We can see the influence of African art in this painting, in the way that he's twisted the women's bodies into raw statue-like figures, and particularly in the texture and contours of the 2 faces on the right, which so clearly recall the African masks he'd seen previously that year. When Picasso showed this painting to his friends and colleagues at his studio, they branded it immoral, even hideous, so he kept it hidden in his studio for several years before the public even saw it. It soon went on to revolutionise modern painting as it was known at the time, and led to many styles and movements, including Cubism. When looking at a work of Cubist painting, it can often appear at first to be a confusing mess of shapes and lines. But what if we try to look at it a different way? If you can imagine a cardboard box that's been flattened and spread out, you can see so many more sides and angles to the shape than you could when it was 3-dimensional. I like to look at Cubist paintings in this kind of way. The artist has not tried to render it as 3-dimensional, but to visualize the different sides of the object from 360 degrees. This is an innovative way of trying to depict a 3D object on a 2D plane. This means the painting allows us to look at an object in a way that we never can through a camera or through our bare eyes. Primitivism also led to the development of Die Brücke, a group of German expressionist artists formed in Dresden. These artists generally worked in a very bold, graphic style, employing thick brushstrokes and painting techniques, and often woodblock printing as well. Another artist who interpreted outside cultures into his works in quite a different way to Picasso was Paul Gauguin. Where Picasso used the stylistic tendencies of these African masks into his paintings, Gauguin looked at the culture as a subject matter that he could interpret into his work. Paul Gauguin moved to the Polynesian island of Tahiti in 1891, where he lived and produced most of his prominent paintings. He saw the idyllic island as an escape from everything he saw as wrong with the modern world of Paris and Europe in general. But the reality of his relationship with the island and the native people there was somewhat more divisive than his colourful depictions of a relaxed paradise suggest. He referred to the native people as savages and fools, and is known to have had relations with teenage girls, one as young as 13. Primitivism is a problematic style. Often the artists who were interpreting these non-Western cultures disregarded their entire histories and looked at them as something exotic, timeless, even savage. The art being seen and collected was not seen as fine art in the same esteem that these artists were producing. It was seen as craft or collectibles or knickknacks. It's important when we look at art, particularly with primitivism, to ask ourselves questions about the piece, about the artist and the subject matter. What are we seeing here? What are its influences that have come to create this piece? How is the subject matter being depicted? If it's, like Gauguin, a depiction of a different culture, how much has it been idealised or exoticised? And how true do we think the impression that we are getting of this culture is? If we look at works by artists such as Francis Ngenda, we can see a kind of reclamation of these indigenous non-Western identities. Francis Ngenda is a Ugandan artist and art teacher who works in a variety of media such as collage, print and sculpture, in work which explores themes such as ethnicity and tradition. A keen advocate of Africa's rich artistic heritage, he is quoted as having once said, "People say my art looks like Picasso, but they have it wrong. It is Picasso who looks like me, like Africa." Another artist we can look at when considering the reinterpretation of primitivism is Jean-Michel Basquiat. In his explosive, multi-layered compositions, Basquiat featured elements and motifs from a wide variety of cultural influences, which come together to create a unique and energetic style. The influence of primitivism can even be found in local Doncaster-based artist Chinwe Russell's work, in her bold outlines, innovative use of colour and stylised human forms, as well as a more flat approach to her subject matter. This video is being created with help from Doncaster Council. Doncaster's got a great growing art scene and it's really worth checking out some of the art fairs and exhibitions that are on. I really hope I've been able to highlight the importance of primitivism as a style in the development of modern art, and also just to take a look at how different cultures interact and influence each other through art.